Well, good evening once again. Day 174 of the Biden administration, on top of all his efforts to hold his domestic agenda together, to hold his own party together, for that matter. This is the eve of a major speech the president will deliver tomorrow in Philadelphia. He will go there to talk about voting rights at a time when Republicans are doggedly passing voter suppression measures from coast to coast.
We don't accept the notion, he's an optimist by nature, otherwise he wouldn't be sitting in the Oval Office right now, that it's dead. We don't accept that. We believe there needs to be a path forward. The president sees his role as somebody who can speak from the bully pulpit to elevate and advocate for the need to move forward on voting rights legislation.
President's speech comes as most of the Democrats in the Texas House of Representatives have fled Texas and flown to Washington. Leaving Texas, leaving their legislative chamber without a quorum was the last best thing they thought they could do to preserve voting rights there and try to defeat the Republican voter suppression bill. They last walked out, you'll recall, back in May. Well, tonight they landed in Washington, where they plan to lobby Democrats in the Senate to pass a voting rights law. In fact, some in the party are hoping these committed Texas Democrats might shame them into showing a little spine.
What other place could we go to where we could actually seek some relief? We're still working on behalf of the people of the state of Texas. This isn't a vacation whatsoever. We're away from our families. We're away from our jobs. So the only thing that we can do is now apply a full court press to the Senate. We have a democratically controlled U.S. House, a democratically controlled U.S. Senate, and we also have a democratically controlled White House. All we're asking is that those that are in charge here in D.C., the Democratic leadership, push through something that is good.
Earlier tonight, two U.S. senators from different sides of the aisle reacted to the Texas Democrats' latest move.
I'm unsure why they are coming here other than for publicity purposes. It's, like I said, it's just a stunt.
You know, the other choice is just to pretend this is okay. It is not okay to take away people's right to vote and to make it hard for people to vote.
But let's begin by listening to and playing for our audience the comments tonight of your governor. We'll discuss on the other side.
They're quitters. That is not the way that Texans do things. This is not over. I will continue calling special session after special session because overtime is going to continue until they step up to vote. Once they step back into the state of Texas, they will be arrested and brought to the Texas Capitol, and we will be conducting business.
So, Professor, I wouldn't be the first to observe that it's evidently okay to leave Texas if you're a Texas politician, if you have a little wheelie bag and a boarding pass that says Cancun. Others have made that point tonight on social media. I will ask you this. What can Texas Democrats teach Senate Democrats in Washington, perhaps?
It's bringing the issue here at home in Texas in terms of the restricting voting rights that we've seen over the last decade happening here in Texas. And they're taking it, Brian, literally to the doorstep of President Biden. You know, I think that for the last couple of months, as we've seen all of these different voting restriction bills across the country weave their way through the political system, we've kept them in a way separate from what's been going on in Washington, D.C., or rather the lack of what's happening. But I think tonight we really saw the confluence of what is happening in our different state capitals across the country and what needs to happen at the federal level, and that whether we like it or not, what's happening at our state level is intertwined with the federal level. And I think at no other moment has the fact that the protections of Section 4 and Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act being gone is so dramatic as in this moment. That being said, I do think that there is a positive bent here. You know, I think at the end of the day, the Republicans in Texas do have the upper hand, and Governor Abbott is going to keep calling sessions until he can get something that he wants out the door. But keep in mind that 10 years ago today, the Democrats had such a small number in the legislature that they could have all left, and the Republicans could have still passed whatever they wanted. So the fact that now Republicans don't have that supermajority, Democrats have made up in terms of numbers slowly but surely, is a long-term win. they're losing a couple of battles, regrettably, but I think in the long term, the way that Texas voters are trending is a bright spot for Democrats here in the state.
Great point about that slow decade-long change in the State House. So, Peter Baker, on the topic of voting rights, the Democratic Party base is getting restless. What does Joe Biden possibly have to say to them?
Well, I think the fact that he is saying anything to them is part of his reaction to the fact that he's getting pressure from the left. The progressives in the party are frustrated that the president hasn't done more to lean on Democrats in the Senate to pass the voting rights legislation there. Remember, they're complaining about the filibuster, but the truth is, even if they got rid of the filibuster tomorrow, they don't have the votes to pass it because they don't have all 50 Democrats on board. Senator Manchin, in particular, Senator Sinema, I think, have expressed reservations about doing anything on voting rights without more of a bipartisan consensus. And so what you're going to see from the president is his reach out to his base saying, I get it. I agree. This is important. But the question is what he can do to actually change the votes. And unless he's willing to, put more pressure on some of these Democrats, it's not clear that there's a path forward to getting this legislation passed there.
And Julie, it is kind of bracing to hear a Texas lawmaker who has put her career on the line in this effort to kind of matter-of-factly run through Democratic control of the White House, House, and Senate. And she wonders why there isn't more movement. Talk about, based on your reporting, just how antsy the base is getting.
Well, this is the great frustration of the Democratic base right now. They look to Washington and they say, we have the White House, we have control of the Senate, we have control of the House. Why is this so difficult for us to act on our big priorities? The problem is that that Democratic coalition that has gotten them that majority across town here is quite diverse, and you don't have a unanimity of opinion on almost any issue, and voting is just one of those issues where we're seeing those cracks in this Democratic coalition here that expands to infrastructure, it expands to pretty much anything else that Joe Biden wants to do here. And so his challenge going forward, if he's going to try to really make this a priority, if he's going to try to put pressure on Democratic senators to get a bill across the finish line, is how does he keep far left of his party and the center of his party together? That has proven to be a pretty big challenge. He's had some early successes when it has come to fiscal policy and COVID relief, certainly, and he's hoping for success on infrastructure, but voting remains, I think, a very difficult issue for him to keep that party together. And that is going to continue to be a huge source of frustration for progressives.
Professor, the noted Republican Bill Kristol, of all people, said on social media tonight, wanting Biden to get more aggressive on such matters. Why isn't he giving this speech in Austin? But it strikes me we have a great opportunity to ask a Texan, where are the people of Texas on these moves proposed by the Republicans that, viewed through just about any prism, equal voter suppression?
All right. So, not surprisingly, we see quite a divide based on partisanship. I think in June, the University of Texas Tribune, did a poll, and it shows that Republicans in this state, registered Republicans, want to see stricter voting laws. So Governor Abbott, Speaker Phelan, they are doing what their base wants them to do. But here is the kicker. And that is that these same registered Republican voters acknowledge that there is not widespread fraud. They disagree with that. That, our own Attorney General said that this past election was one of the most secure elections that the state of Texas had ever had. Nevertheless, for the Republican Party, these issues of voting are at the top of the ticket. And let me just add the political context, because policy is enveloped in politics. And Governor Abbott is up for re-election next year. He has drawn two candidates to the right of him, Alan West and another one from Tea Party caucus. And so he knows that he needs to keep running right. And also, I'll put it out there that there's a lot of talk here in Austin, here in Texas, about the presidential aspirations of Governor Abbott. So all of those political motivations, together with what the base values, is where we are.